All right, all of you freedom-loving boys and girls, Mark here at Mission Critical Podcast. You can see we've got another guest inside the studio tonight. We've got some other guests. We'll go over that in a second. But as always, if you're watching this podcast or if you're listening to it, remember, you are the resistance, right? Ain't no one coming to save us. You are the resistance. So again, I'm Mark, one of your hosts, and the other host,
Redbeard.
And as you can see, we've got some special guests here tonight in studio. And matter of fact, why don't we just start off with the guest to my left, your right. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and why in the hell?
Thank you.
Why did you volunteer to be here?
I was invited.
Oh, okay, you were invited.
That's right. My name is Paul. Let's see, I've been interested in UFOs in general. I'm let's see, background. I'm a bit of a techie, electrical engineer, biomedical engineer. What else? I'm ham radio operator, almost
Nice.
a prepper, and mad scientist wannabe.
There you go. That's a pretty good.
I like it.
Right there.
That's a good aspiration.
I would have definitely thrown a little of the mad scientist one in there.
Oh, yeah.
So Paul definitely has an interest in this subject. Matter of fact, I kind of got a little excited and ahead of myself. Before I go to the other guests, tonight's subject is going to be about UFOs and little green men. Dustin is just crushing it down there.
No, I'm sorry. UPS just delivered some 458 SOCOM ammo.
Ooh, that's valid.
Okay, now we're
sir.
going in a different direction. But so before you get Jeremy to spun up here. All right, so here, tonight's episode, boys and girls, we're going to talk about UFOs and little green men. Jeremy and I really went round and round on the subject for tonight, and because there's just so much incredibly awful things going on in the world right now. And we were like, you know what, let's just have a little fun. Let's have a fun podcast because otherwise we're just going to be giving ourselves ulcers and heart attacks here with everything that's going on right now. So, all right, we lost Dustin for a second, so let's come over to Devin. Devin, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and why in the hell did you volunteer to be here tonight?
Honestly, Mark, I don't know, but thank you for asking. I'm 27. I'm from Wisconsin, Superior to be exact. My background is industrial maintenance, so nothing UFO related. I just have I don't know. I like the subject, so I figured, hey, why not throw my 2 cents in? Why not throw my opinions in? Maybe somebody will get it, maybe somebody won't. I don't know. But that's really all I got.
Yep.
That's a pretty good. That's all you got. And then on that, let's just continue going clockwise, and we'll come over to Dustin, who's been with us before, but we really appreciate him.
Thanks for having me, by the way. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no. Thank you guys for all being here. Even though I'm sitting next to this smelly guy, but, other than that, All right, Dustin,
Mark.
tell us, remind everybody who you are and why you're here and what you got going on, a little bit about all that madness going on behind you.
Yeah, I'm Dustin. I'm from Central Texas. I own Ducks Heritage Cowboy Boots. I make custom cowboy boots and other leather-related things. And as far as UFOs, I mean, I'm very opinionated on it. I think I probably share the same opinions with anyone who's going to watch this podcast or who's participating in this. So, I can't wait to talk about it.
Nice.
All right.
He also, I think, has the best background too, Mark. That's a pretty awesome background.
Oh, again, I don't know if we said it exactly in the last podcast with Dustin, but seated next to me was Kevin from Empire, Canvas, and we're just both, Dustin was walking around, showing, as he was doing stuff in his shop, and we're like, ooh, what is that? Ooh, what is that? We were just all like kids in a candy store.
Like eye candy.
Had a really impressive backdrop, no doubt about it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. All right, well, here's the deal, guys. So we're going to jump into this because I know everybody's got a little bit of a time constraint. Well, not everybody, but there's a couple time constraints tonight. And as we're kind of going into it, I'm going to do a little housekeeping up front. We'll do this near the end of the podcast, but this is a giveaway podcast. So before we start talking about UFOs and little green men, it is a giveaway podcast. Jeremy will have a question during housekeeping at the end. And tonight's giveaway, and this kind of goes into a little bit what Dustin and Redbeard were just doing and talking about, but we're going to give away one of these really awesome EDC trays from CountyCom. Right? You want to hold that up? Oh, he was doing the Vanna White. Oh, yeah. There you go. Nice. So one of these really kick-ass little EDC trays from CountyCom. And for a first time ever, I mean, it's not been viewed anywhere else except here tonight. I just finished making a prototype bag pouch. You can carry it and wear it in a couple different ways. And it is specifically oriented. Now, again, you'll just like anything we make, you can use it for a lot of other stuff. But it is designed to hold a Ruger 1022. The Ruger 1022 is not a part of tonight's giveaway. But this bag, this pouch right here, I already love it. And so we're going to give one of these away from my business, Centerline Systems. Yeah, they're not even on the website. They probably won't even be on the website for a little bit. So whoever answers Jeremy's question, and Jeremy is the decider. He is the one who wields all the power on who the winner is. But he'll have a question. You'll get an EDC tray and a brand new, I don't even know what we're going to call it yet. Matter of fact, maybe that should be part of the question. What the hell should we call that pouch? The 1022? I'll probably get in trouble if I do that. But all right, so that's it. So we'll get to the question a little bit later. It's a giveaway episode. Now let's jump into the heart of the matter. UFOs and little green men. Again, we wanted to talk about some other issues just because of just the madness, the sheer insanity that's taking place in the world today. Whether it's America or we had somebody who was going to be on the podcast tonight. They couldn't do it. He's been on in the past, David, and he and I were talking about Derna, the flooding, the dams that broke, and David and I were just kind of, it's a horrendous thing. A lot of people lost their lives. But I think David and I might be some of the only Westerners who's been to Derna and who knows how long, because that's one of the places that we hung out. But again, I'm just throwing that out there because I almost feel like I need to get that off my chest, because I just want to say, there is so much shit going on in the world right now. It's unbelievable. Everything from the escalation of the war over in Ukraine to crazy governors in America deciding that the Constitution doesn't matter at all. So instead, we're going to switch directions. UFOs and little green men. And I'm going to start this off by simply saying this. Matter of fact, and Paul and I were talking about this before. So, whether you're looking at the Drake equation or Occam's, or even if you're taking it from a religious perspective, in my humble opinion, of course there's life on other planets. I mean, how could there not? I mean, if you're a Christian, I don't think that even remotely, that has no bearing and impact on my faith and religion. I would actually argue the exact opposite. How could the great creator, just create us, and then what? Then he just been sitting on his ass for the rest? Come on, that doesn't even make any sense, right? So from my humble perspective, of course there's life on planets someplace else. I mean, hell, you might know this more than I do, but I mean, what are we up to right now for the number of galaxies even? You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, it's so mathematically insane that someone would say that there's not life on another planet.
Yeah, you got so many stars in our galaxy. We're discovering more and more planets. And then galaxies or galaxy clusters. It just keeps going.
Yeah. And then as you were kind of saying, Paul, why don't you just throw in that? We were talking about everything, in the Drake equation, the more and more we're learning, the more that's becoming, it's coming into a mathematical, it has to be.
Yeah, there's the Drake equation, if you don't know, is the series of probabilities that add up to what the chances of life are elsewhere in the universe. It has to do with things such as, are there planets going around the other stars? We didn't know. Are those planets, do they have an atmosphere? We didn't know. On and on and on. Well, we're starting to drop out those probabilities. Now we know that stars have planets. Now we're starting to see that those planets have atmospheres. So those probabilities are tending toward one now. So it's becoming much more likely. Yeah, the Drake equation that there's something out there.
Yeah. Well, and again, and just to that note and point, and then we'll bring this over to everybody else to chime in on, is so just recently, there, and I don't know exactly how they were able to ascertain this, but it probably has to be again of like how, what light spectrum we're looking at the light coming from a distant planet is. But there's a exoplanet in, I think it's the constellation Leo, and they're all up in arms because they've discovered a gas on this planet. And here on Earth anyway, that gas is only associated with living organisms. It's not associated with any type of volcanic eruption or anything. It has to do with life. So, I mean, to that point, well then, it just becomes even more and more with each passing day. I think science is maybe catching up, or there's new discoveries, but it's being, kind of like, well, yeah, there has to be something. Now, whether that means that they have interstellar travel capabilities, I'm not saying that, but I am going to just throw in there, let's throw it to the group. What do you guys think? Let's go over to Devin first. Like, does life on another planet, or the fact that there's extraterrestrial life, does that have to be determined by, actually spaceships, in our atmosphere, hovering over the Capitol or something like that? Or
nope,
what does that mean to you?
And 100%, to exactly what you were saying too, from like a probability standpoint. And I heard this analogy a long time ago, so it might not be updated, but I mean, it still stands for what it is. So if you were to take the distance from the Earth to the sun and compare it to a soccer field, the very next star that we're well-versed in is like 8 hours away at 60 miles an hour down a highway. So we're well-versed in one. We know this houses life, to whatever we are. The nearest one is very far away. We don't know what it houses, but I mean, from a probability standpoint, how can we say that the only one we know that houses life, and the next nearest one, it just doesn't, and the one after that doesn't, and the next one doesn't? There's just no way that makes any sense. So from a probability standpoint, I agree with you completely that there's just no way that we're the only thing. It doesn't make any sense.
All right, let's bring it over to Dustin. Dustin, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I'll get this out of the way. I'm a creationist, so I believe that there is a creator, whether it's God or Allah or whatever you want to call it or him. I believe that we're designed. We have an intelligent designer, and there's too much in biology to suggest that this was all an accident. In fact, biology or the sciences, in my mind, disprove evolution. So I think we have a creator. To think our creator only created Earth, I think that's unlikely. So there is not a beginning of time and there's not an end of time. The same with numbers, or the same with mathematics. Numbers go on forever in every direction. +1, +2, plus a million, plus a billion, plus a trillion, and it goes the other direction, -1, -2, -100, -1 trillion. And so numbers never stop. And my belief is time doesn't stop. And so the notion that time started at Big Bang doesn't make any sense to me. If there was I'm not getting to a creation debate or a discussion, but I'm leading up to what I believe in. To think that there was this ball of mass that exploded, well, the ball of mass existed for who knows how long. Even if Big Bang were true, there was not a beginning of time. So time has always been. And I read an article a couple of days ago about this group of scientists who believe that the universe is smaller than what we believe, which is still not small. They think the universe, this theory that they have, the universe is only 15 times larger than what we can observe. The observable universe, speaking even about Hubble and Webb telescope, 15 times that is still huge. But most scientists believe that, it's a much larger than that. So I think that the probability that, I think where I'm getting at, I don't believe Earth is special, and I don't really know that Earth is special in our Creator's eyes. I think there was much more to His creation or her creation, whatever you believe, than just Earth. So yeah, I definitely believe that there's life out there. Now, this is a rabbit hole, and how deep are we going to go? I mean, you know, do we have evidence that there is life out there? I mean, other than UFO stories like Roswell or the Travis Walton case, which is very, very compelling, and which that's another rabbit hole to go down. So, you know, do I believe that there are little green men in spaceships visiting Earth? I'm not so sure about that, but I'm not opposing. I'm not saying that that's not happening. So the notion is that the universe is so vast that it would take them, you know, millions of years to get here. But the notion is, well, maybe they're interdimensional. They travel in ways that we don't understand. And so I'm up for that idea, and I'm up for that discussion. But, you know, as far as, you know, UFOs, you know, I'm not so sure about that. But, you know, and reptilians in the government and all this other BS. I mean, who knows? But yeah, I think there's life out there, to answer your question.
Well, we've got to come
I
back
believe
to,
there's a ton of life out there.
yeah, we're going to have to come back to what you just said, because it makes me think of this analogy about Columbus and Cortez and, you know, the ancient explorers. But let's come over to Redbeard first. Yeah. So we're just right now just kind of getting it warmed up here, you know. So we got Redbeard. What do you think? Is it BS, or does life exist elsewhere? And, you know, what are your thoughts, sir?
I'm gonna just mildly piggyback off of what Dustin was saying, and I mean, to a certain degree, you know, it's like you do have people that are just like, oh yeah, like there was this big bang, and all of a sudden, you know, shit just started to kick off, and look at where we are now. And it's like, yeah, but like, I don't think people fundamentally understand like what a catalyst is. A lot of people talk about catalysts and they talk about a start, but it's like, how does something just happen? How do you explain that something just happens? And I'm a firm believer that we just like, we try to have this superiority complex of knowing things, because we need to feel superior, not only to each other, but also in the idea that, like, you know, knowledge is power. But in the end of the day, I think, like myself included, like there's just certain things that we're not going to fundamentally understand. It's not for us to understand. It doesn't mean that we couldn't possibly understand it. It doesn't mean that, you know, there aren't things that we can understand. But I do think that, you know, when it comes to particular origins, like we may never find the answer to that. And I think we have to get to a point to where, should we stop looking? No. But at the same point, like, we have to accept the reality too, that we may never find the answer to that. And you know, whether people like it or not, you know, Mark, you know that myself, I'm a Christian. I believe in God, and I believe that, you know, He is the fundamental creator of everything that we have. And I feel like that in and of itself, Him existing is that catalyst, and that is the answer to the creation of different things. Now, on a slightly different tangent here, if we look at something in this, Mark, this might bring you to Starship Trooper vibes, if you will. But
bring it. I love it. Bring it.
So if you look at something like a cockroach, and you look at how much they can endure, I mean, you're looking at things like nuclear, extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme things like that. And then you look at these different environments that persist, right? Like you can freeze a cockroach and you can thaw it out and that thing is still alive, right? Like there are certain adaptations that creature has to where it can survive. I mean, it's been said before, you can stomp on a cockroach and somehow it still finds a way to survive. So when you think about that and the idea that, like, yes, there's extreme planets, and don't get me wrong, I mean, there are probably planets out there that would absolutely devastate a cockroach, but we also have to understand where life kind of came from, right? There was a whole scientific effect from single cell organisms to multi-cell organisms. And when you evaluate that and you look at the heat that was required for that to happen, for that to create an environment, you have to think about the resiliences of these organisms. And a lot of them died before they even came to fruition. But that being said, I find it extremely hard to believe that there does not exist a type of organism that is not more robust, that is potentially not more used to a harsher environment or a harsher climate. I mean, look at human beings in general. There's people that can live in insane heat, and I'm not talking American heat. I'm talking like Middle Eastern. It gets to 120 degrees, like hot, right? And then you have cold, like Siberia. It gets to negative 60, 70, 80 out there. And you have human beings that live in that. This is the type of stuff that freezes Freon lines and helicopters. So we will find a way as humans. So why is it that hard to think about the fact that organisms, whether it's us or something else, couldn't find a way to persist outside of not only our planet, but our universe altogether? So, I mean, there could be an entire race of bugs out there that fulfill that, Starship Trooper fantasy. And I see Mark smiling there a little bit, but
the movie
like
sucks. The book is awesome.
And it's that's just kind of how I feel. Like, obviously you look at something as simple as a cockroach and it's robust. There's nobody that argues how robust a cockroach is. So why is it hard to examine that there couldn't be an organism out there somewhere, whether closer or nearer to us? And I would say that we as humans, we have a tendency to look farther instead of evaluating closer to us. And we could have something a lot closer to us than I think we might realize, and we're just not looking in the right spots. So I'll yield
and that's
to that.
a great segue. I'm going to make a comment here and then turn it over to our guest to respond to, or respond however they see fit. But something you just said, we don't know what we don't know, but yet, so this question, do aliens, little green men exist?
Mhm.
We haven't even, we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about our ocean depths. We have no idea what's living under, again, and if you're a diver, 10 feet is a unit of pressure, right? But we don't even know what's down there at the deepest of levels. There's stuff that we found in Antarctica that, it just kind of blows everybody's mind. New species are being discovered all the time. And yet we're supposed to sit there and say, there's only life on planet Earth. I mean, so I'm throwing that out to your point, Jeremy, because that just doesn't even make any sense. And Devin was kind of already alluding to this as well with come on, man,
And real quick to that, Mark.
Go ahead, Redbeard.
No, I was just going to say real quick. We're still finding stuff on land. So the idea that we've explored most of our terrestrial land, to me, is the most asinine thing in the world. We're human beings. We've explored this, but we haven't found most of the ocean. It's like, is that why you still find 37 different types of parakeet? Really? Like, either you're lying or you're not being honest with yourself. So I'll yield to that.
Well, I'm just going to add to that, and then let's come over to Devin. And Paul's cousin husband's already been scribbling notes down.
Cousin husband.
Well, yeah. But on your point there, Jeremy, again, this isn't quite UFO. This is a little bit more in a slightly different subject, but still relating. You hear everybody say, "Well, we haven't discovered, the remains of Sasquatch, so therefore Sasquatch doesn't exist."
Yeah.
Well, both from terms of a logic, that's a fallacy. That's like saying it's wet outside, therefore it's raining. No, there could be a whole bunch of other reasons why it's wet outside. So when you get into that from a logic perspective, that doesn't work. But also, I would also just challenge anybody who's a hunter. Like, how many bear carcasses have you found out there? I've only found one in my whole time, my whole existence as a human being, spending almost all of my time as a kid out in the woods. And I've only just, and then now later in life hunting and, I've only found one bear carcass in my whole life. So to Jeremy's point, if it's an alien species or if it's a different species and we don't know how these species grow, how they develop, how they view, how they or it views its environment, well, what's to say that they just don't bury them? There's all kinds of stuff. Matter of fact, now I'm getting in a little bit of my own rabbit hole. you know, kind of some of the shitty things that the Taliban and ISIS did, blowing up some of those, and there's rumors of what was, up there on the walls in the back, so I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but that's a good one to go down.
Giants of Kandahar.
Yeah, exactly. No, to that point. Kevin, what do you want to add to that, or do you kind of see where we're going? I mean, I think, the bottom line is like, shit, there's stuff on our own planet we don't even know.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But one thing I do want to add to Redbeard's comments, and I do like everything of what he said, right? But just one thing I want to add is, when you're talking the cockroach analogy, who's to say, we set the parameters? I'm not disagreeing with you whatsoever, but like, what is extreme heat? What is extreme cold? What can one endure and what one can't? If you could imagine right now, right here, today, life on Mars, life on down near Pluto. I mean, you could probably say there's probably a chance that it wouldn't happen. For sure on Pluto, maybe not on Mars. I don't know how today's technology is going. I don't keep up on it. But to say that we, because that's all we know. But that's the thing, too, is that is all we know. All we know is Earth. All we know is what is livable and what we deem as not livable, right?
And
so
that's for us as a species.
That's for us. That's for us.
Yep.
So for others, I mean, how can we say that, what we deem not livable isn't livable for something else?
Exactly.
So, I mean, there is something to be said about that. But yeah, no, I do like that analogy. But no, that's pretty much all I have to add on that.
Yeah, and I think those tolerances are exponential, by the way. I mean, like
absolutely,
you said,
absolutely.
I mean, it's
Well, but to go to both of your point, and then I'll turn it over to Paul here, cousin husband. I mean, again, we're taking that from a very, hominoid, a human perspective. To Jeremy's point, what's to say that the higher form of life, or even to Devin's point, on Pluto, maybe it's something that can withstand, extreme cold, or doesn't need oxygen to thrive, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, really, I think, what I think from my perspective, all I'm trying to say is we don't know what we don't know. Given the limited parameters that we can operate on right now, we're starting to discover planets that mimic what we think is necessary for life.
Yeah.
But to Devin's point, well, what if it is that cockroach species? We're going back to, Starship Troopers, and it's a hive mind bug thing that can survive in much limited, well, shit. I mean, just even think about animal life on this planet. There's certain animals who are mammalian, mammals, who can hold their breath for 45 minutes, dive down, like 1,000 feet, under the surface of water. Like, the pressures are intense right there, and they're just flesh and blood like us, and they can slow their heart rate down to 1 beat per minute. So you see what I'm saying? Like, come on, man. Even within our little realm, life is so. I kind of want to say exotic, or it's so expansive.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much that. What do we know? All right, cousin husband, you want to jump on that?
Going with that. The bottom of the ocean, volcanic vents, we have, I believe, iron-eating microbes. That's a whole different kind of biology, and that very evolved to something with intelligence. So that's an example of looking outside the normal box. And going back to the Drake equation stuff, they have also found one of the tricky things is how the building blocks of life would form. And now we're realizing it seems the universe is flooded with amino acids, and that really bumps up the chance of the chances of normal conventional life.
As seen from our perspective.
As seen from our perspective, yes. And in fact, I'm looking at Whitley Strieber's Unknown Country website, and I've heard this before.
Oh, here, slow that down and say that again.
Oh, yeah. Whitley Strieber has a website called unknowncountry.com.
If I remember, I'll put that link in the video.
Yes, he wrote the book Communion, if that rings a bell. He also wrote Wolfen and some other novels. But His headline: Add water and sterilize. Mars Viking probes may have killed the microbes they were looking for. And I've heard that as well. On Mars, there is methane. And they're trying to figure out, is that volcanic or is that some longer term thing? Because it's volcanic, it would go away fairly quickly. So even on Mars, our neighbor Mars, there might be life. I'm going to throw a little curveball to this whole story. If you're looking at conventional physics, conventional life, possibly we could have left before some big calamity. It is possible we left the planet and Earth had a calamity and we moved to underground on Mars and there's still a colony there. And that's the UFOs. That would fit with all the conventional physics that we know now. I doubt that that's true, but it's a possibility.
So you're throwing out there like the whole ancient society, ancient life type of premise. But again, and there's arguments that there was advanced technology. I mean, just look at some of the stonework. Mm-hmm. We can't even come close to replicating that. So again, and science is nothing more than this is the direction you're going in. They could have looked at it instead of working with I'm just going to throw this out there, gravitics or electrons or nuclear. They may have went with sound and water and something else. But so what do we know? And then so your argument is so there was an advanced civilization. There's a calamity, but that technology or whatever they were capable of, they may have went and moved someplace off planet. But then we now are the ancient ancestors of whoever survived. Because there's lost technology, lost civilization theories. I mean, maybe
that's one of many angles to this.
What do you guys think about that? Is he already smoking too much, funny cigars, or what do you guys think? Let's come over to Dustin here. Dustin, I had you muted. I'm sorry, sir, but you were making way too much noise. Like, what are you trying to do?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So going along with the ancient technology, the precision in which the pyramids were built, I mean, that's something to think about, and we can't match that today. And the precision, I read a fact about by the time they got to the top of the pyramids, there was like a 1/4 inch error that modern technology can't even come close to that. And so the pyramids, there's rock walls in Peru where the fitting of the rocks are so precise. I do think that there was an ancient technology that's been lost, whether aliens helped them out with that or whatever, who knows. But I do know, I don't believe slave labor built the pyramids. It's crazy. There's no way on earth that slave labor with crude technology could have built the pyramids. It's crazy. There's something more to it. So that's my thought on that.
I just got to throw some in there because that's one of the things that I've never agreed with ever since I was a little kid. You're telling me Bronze Age tools, quarried and transported and crafted and then moved. And I love all that. Well, maybe they built big, earthen ramparts, and then to your point, Dustin, and then all these slaves push this stuff up there. It's like, come on, man. Just the logistical infrastructure and the agriculture, because again, there wasn't frozen food. I mean, you would need to have fields and herds and all this stuff to keep everybody fed. Even if they were slaves, you still got to keep them fed, right? Because otherwise they'd be dead if they're not fed. Devin, fed or dead? What are your thoughts on the pyramids? Let's just kind of do a little sidebar here because I actually like that one, and I like about the other monolithic structures. There's pieces of rock. I think it's in Turkey where other structures are built upon, and the thing is, if you're watching this and you're into this, you probably know more about it than me. But it's like, here's a piece of rock that's like 200 feet long, by 20 feet tall by 40 feet wide, and it had been moved and set to Dustin said perfectly, so flush you can't even get a piece of paper in between them. And we're supposed to believe that ancient man was just hunter gatherers. I say no. Devin, what say you, sir?
So I'm not well versed in this subject. I actually do know, and I actually do have my own opinions on it, but I don't know if I'm willing to speak about them because, like, I have no info to back them. I have nothing to back them other than my own personal views, right? But I will say that just to touch up on what Dustin said, there's no way in hell that they were just man-made, built with no nothing, no this, no that. I mean, when you take a look at the major of them, and they were so well like planned out that they were in line with stars and whatnot. There's just no way that wasn't from some sort of. I'm not even trying to say it was like UFO or anything, like steering clear from this topic of discussion or whatever. But like, there's no way that they were just built on a whim, built on slave, half-assed, do it this way, do it that way. There's just no way. There was a reason they were built, and I don't know. I mean, there was a reason they were built for sure, but I guess I really don't know where to go from there. But
Well,
I mean,
what that reason is unknown to us. I mean, because maybe the technology has been lost to us.
yeah, that's the point, right?
Right, exactly.
Can I add to that real quick?
And Dustin, just one little thing, and I'll come over to you. But to Dustin's point, Devin, like, hey, we're talking like, because you mentioned the astronomy behind it, dude. How in the hell did they know that? I mean, like, so again,
how?
Yeah. Was it UFOs? Was it like, some other type of being was here and sharing knowledge? Did they just have a knowledge? Did ancient man have a better sense of space and time than we do? Actually, I'm kind of open to that argument because most people don't even know. You and I have talked about this a million times. Most people don't know anything about celestial navigation or, like the moon and the stars. So, all right, Dustin, you want to chime in that because you got Devin all kind of fired up there. So what do you got?
Well, I just want to add about the pyramids, considering that the 3 pyramids of Giza line up with Orion's belt with precision. Yeah. How did they know? How could they have done that? Also, take into consideration the Great Pyramid is not a 4-sided pyramid; it's an 8-sided pyramid,
8-sided. Yep.
And so each side, as you view it, appears to be one side. It's actually concaved in with precision. The Great Pyramid's not 4-sided; it's 8-sided. And also another thing I'd like to add to that, longitudinally, latitudinally, I don't know how that works, but you can draw a straight line from the pyramids in maybe not Peru, but there's a relation geographically from the pyramids in Cambodia, Vietnam, to the pyramids in Mexico, to the pyramids in Egypt. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there. There's a lot more to the story than what we know. If any of you or any of the viewers have heard of Graham Hancock, I absolutely would recommend Googling them, watching YouTube videos. Joe Rogan has even done Graham Hancock interviews, and they're absolutely mind-blowing. So just thought I'd throw that in.
It was funny you just sort of saying that because that's where my brain went. I'm like, Graham Hancock and who's his buddy?
Randall Carlson.
Randall Carlson. Those are some of the best Joe Rogan podcasts of all. I could go back and I probably watch every time I hear that there's another Randall Carlson or Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan. Dude, just get some popcorn and strap in because those guys are. And I love it. They've even had some people come and try to debate, but those people don't come with. It's just the same old. It's like that guy from the Egyptian guy who's part of their antiquities, Hawassi. It's just bullshit. It's like you're a bigot. It's just like those type of answers and excuses and arguments. So, no, that was a great point. And another person who I think does good, and this is not a bad segue, and then we can just keep going where we're going. But Jimmy from Bright Insight has got some really good stuff on YouTube. He's a little bit more on ancient mysteries and like he's got some really good stuff on Atlantis and things of that nature. But yeah, Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson, there's some smart mother effers right there, plain and simple. Who wants to chime in here? We can keep going on this direction. Oh, I got. Did you raise your hand?
I raised my hand. I could chime in.
I actually saw you in the monitor. I was like, okay, go ahead then, sir.
I'm thinking a slightly different direction, maybe. We're looking at there's a term used called the tin can theory of UFOs. That they were critters, biological critters, built some fancy tin can, launched themselves across space, and landed here, and that's what a UFO is. And we can expand that out to be interdimensional travelers, or even us from the future coming back to get some clean DNA because it's all been messed up. But there's called the UFO phenomenon, and you mentioned Bigfoot. That can tie into that as well. That this is not potentially strictly a physical phenomenon. I know a guy who's been investigating UFOs for years, and the more I looked into it, the more he felt it was more hopeless to get some hard physical evidence, yet made it harder to deny that something was happening. As if something's out there is playing games with us, keeping us right on the edge, pulling us in but not giving us something physical. I don't know if you the psychologist Carl Jung, he was a very unusual psychologist. He had ideas like the collective unconscious. He had a theory that this is I don't know if psychical manifestation is the right term, but this is a non-physical thing. That could eventually could have a physical form that would happen. There was a group of people who supposedly did an experiment where they worked, meditated, whatever, to decide they're going to have a UFO show up. And what do you know? It showed up for them. So,
I mean, what's interesting about that is because, unfortunately, the moment you start talking about UFOs, you have to look at so many other, kind of metaphysical or just other arenas, and whether that's astral projection or, the mental
thought forms.
So we again, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, and some people have lumped UFOs, Bigfoot, Marian vision, and other phenomenon has the same root phenomenon. And there's even stories of UFOs, associations with Bigfoot.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of strange oddities out there like that. So maybe it's not a physical thing. Maybe
which then also ties into everything with hominids and Skinwalker.
Ranch. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, there's so many friggin' rabbit holes we could go down here. Let's come over to Redbeard. He's been patiently, when I'm just telling everybody a little inside baseball. When I go full screen on somebody, I can still look down below and see what people are doing. And Jeremy is always eating. He's always eating something off screen or drinking a protein shake. I mean,
he's a growing boy.
Yeah, he is. I mean, All right, Jeremy, what do you got for us besides protein shakes?
So, sir? Mark, you might appreciate this as well as Paul and Dustin and Devin if he's seen it. But do you guys ever remember the movie John Carpenter's The Thing?
No.
It's one of my favorite movies. I probably watch it 2 times a year.
I can't help but to think of so when I first saw that movie as a kid, I was just like, of all because I had seen Aliens and AVP and Predator and stuff like that. And those were fun, campy, movies. But I remember, watching The Thing, at least in terms of extraterrestrial movies and whatnot and sci-fi movies. And I was just like, how terrifying is it to think that there's something out there that not only assimilates but mimics you in every conceivable way until it gets caught, and it does it to almost a perfect degree, outside of the fact that the biggest thing with The Thing is it couldn't have metal teeth pieces or fillings. It couldn't have certain features, right? And I think about that, and then I think about some other movies to where that, or it would be like an extraterrestrial like spore or bacteria or something like that. And it's like, of all the things that I think about out there, like, yeah, the idea of a different alien race is wild, and life and all of that. But it's like, the thing to me is like, dude, like, we actually don't know that there's not something out there like the thing, or like carnivorous bacteria. And it's like, to me, when I think about how much that like some people actually delve into stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, like, we'll just, one of these days we're just gonna yeet something out there, and then when it comes back, we're gonna be like, we'll be super enthused to see what we have. It's like, dude, like, how do you know that like that doesn't come back with something that low key will absolutely just devastate the entire population of Earth? Like, and it doesn't even have to be like this grandiose like Independence Day thing. It could just be like, well, we brought something back that like basically assimilates your loved ones. You'll never know it until it like rips your head off or something like that. And then it assumes you. And and I remember that movie was just like, it just blew my mind, not only from a practical effects standpoint, but from the idea, the simple idea that like it was. And even at the end of the movie, you still didn't know who it was. You had no clue. You didn't know if it was Mac. You didn't know if it was the other guy he was with at the end. Like, you didn't know. And so, and the only way you find that out is if you actually read, and I'm going to go down a nerd area here, but if you actually read the comics. So, like, that's the thing is, no pun intended, but that's just it. Like, to me, that's the most terrifying thing about all of it. And it's like, it's totally science fiction, but the thing of it is like, to me, science fiction kind of in some invariable way like lends itself to reality to some degree. And it's like, that idea to me is terrifying. So I just had to go there because I was just like, dude, like, there could totally be something out there that's like that. And that's terrifying to me. So
Well, the thing, John Carpenter, and actually, if you go and watch the 1950s, I love the John Carpenter, the thing with
the new one sucks though.
Well, actually, I was okay with that too, because I liked how it kind of explained, and we saw why there was an axe in the wall, and there was a little
I mean,
bit
that
of
was
that
good,
was
but
cool.
yeah,
But
from
I
an
just want to
effect
throw out there,
standpoint.
there's the black and white version, a 1950s. I think
Yeah.
it's called Who Goes There. Well, it's the name of the book was Who Goes There. I think it's called The Thing as well. I have that. And the dialogue, the acting,
Yeah.
the pace of it doesn't have the special effects, but it's still just as scary.
Mhm.
And the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and I'm bringing this up because it goes to your point,
Yeah.
but I also think it goes to a larger point of how we are so fascinated with the subject about UFOs. Look at how much science fiction there was in the 50s. There's so many good UFO movies or horror movies based on alien.
Yeah.
And again, and it's not always Independence Day, Jeremy. So I'm high-fiving you for saying that, because okay, that's actually something like I can see it, I can deal with it. It might kill me, or War of the Worlds, but it's the other stuff. Like, is Paul really Paul, or is he a pod person? Like, you don't know what's going to happen. So, now, I kind of want to throw out there along the same lines Roswell, because Roswell is just obviously one of the most, it's not the first by any means, but it's
probably one of the most prolific, I would say.
Yeah. So I kind of want to get everybody's thoughts on that, because again, to me, auf Deutsch natürlich, of course there's life on other planets, right? It just doesn't make any sense mathematically and from so many scientific perspectives. And like, what Devin was saying, we're basing it on off of us, carbon-based life forms. What about creatures that breathe methane, or there's so many other ways to go with it. So Devin, do you want to comment a little bit more on like the kind of aspect of what we were just doing, or do you want to go in a different direction with like, was Roswell bullshit, or where would you like to insert?
Yeah, no, I 100% will comment on what we're talking about. So, and thanks for mentioning that. But so with the whole Roswell thing, I mean, you got to understand too, is this was a very, very different era. And this is actually probably a milestone, honestly. And I don't know if you want to call it ufology, whatever you want to call it, but this was a milestone. So the one thing with Roswell that is inexcusable, and I will fucking take this to my grave on my standpoint on this, but nobody will. I mean, unless it comes out different to where I'm just wrong and I've been wrong all along. But the one thing that with Roswell is inexcusable, and there's plenty of video, evidence, whatever, even on YouTube, like public websites or whatever, is the one thing with Roswell is they for sure 100% retracted their statement, which is an immediate red flag, obviously, but they came out and said, and the one thing that I want to reiterate is when you come out and you say something just out of this world, because it is, and you come out and you say that it is, we have basically captured, or we are in possession of species, something from another planet. There has to be, and maybe you can reiterate on this, Mark, but there has to be a whole hell of a lot of a chain of command, right? So these guys are coming out and saying that we have captured something that is unearthly origin, whatever. But the problem is within a handful of hours, they retracted their statement. That is the one thing about Roswell that is inexcusable, because how can you come out and say that with going through those chains of commands, those loops, whatever, and then you just immediately retract your statement and say it's a weather balloon?
Well,
That can't make sense. That can't make sense.
Well, and to your point, what I always love about it, and I didn't know you were going to say it that way, and I'm high-fiving you for doing it, because
High five.
yeah, here we go, boom, high five, everybody, high five to Devo. But from my personal experience, again, 20 plus years in the military, blah blah, which, okay, that could just be my experience, but to Devin's point, everybody consider this, think about this. These are supposedly experts, and this was, and remember, at that time, Roswell, and I might get this slightly wrong, but I know I'm going to be pretty damn close, was either our only or one of two atomic of fighter wings, strategic wings that were atomic, in possession of nuclear weapons. Well, they were atomic, really, but so these were like the best of the best. To Devin's point, the cream of the crop, right? The men who worked their way through the ranks because of the skills and achievements. They're there for a reason, because they had an incredibly important mission, and they couldn't tell the difference between a weather balloon. And we're supposed to believe, oh no, these knuckleheads got it wrong on night. It was like night shift. Oh, the night shift guys don't know what the hell they're doing. And it's us day shift guys that are coming around saying it's just a weather balloon.
If they were so like good people, why would they come up with the most crazy story up front? Say, I guess I was wrong. That makes no sense either.
Yeah, like they didn't. Yeah. They should have been like, oh, this is potentially Russian. Origin, Soviet. No. They went to, like Devin's point. They went high and right. Hey, dude, we just captured freaking aliens, dude.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's a weather balloon. Darn. And hang on. And then to Devin's point, now I'm liking it even more. And they still had their jobs the next day. Like, dude, you can't be in charge of atomic weapons if you can't tell the difference between a weather. Like, no, you should not be in charge anymore.
Yep.
Who wants to jump in on that? Devin kind of started that one off. Redbeard.
No, I actually like it. So, I mean, I'm more than willing to capitalize on this. So, the whole 1940s era of UFO is actually why I agreed to be on this, is because, to be fair with you, Mark, and I watched previous podcasts. I don't have opposing views. I'm not I didn't watch them 100% to where I'm just coming on here to disagree with anything. But when it comes to the 1940s and even as far as the early 50s, I will say 100% that with all I believe in, and be that as it may, but there's just no way. There's just no way. From as early as Roswell, and Roswell was one of the very, very, very first ones. So it started with Kenneth Arnold, right? So it started with Kenneth Arnold. Kenneth Arnold was just, an amateur pilot, whatever. He flew across, I believe, well, his most known was he flew across the Washington Cascades, and he's seen what he thought was UFOs. And how he determined them to be UFOs was they were traveling at a very high rate of speed, as in something we can't even fathom at this point because it's the 1940s. They were 1,000+ miles an hour. And there's just, there's not a whole lot of explanation for something traveling at that speed at that point in time. But anyways, from beyond that, the Roswell situation happened, right? And then after that, there were thousands. It literally blew up in the media, in the public. It blew up to what you couldn't even fathom. And there were high-ranking politicians, high-ranking government, whatever, trying to figure this out. I mean, this is actually at a touchy time too, because this is right after World War II. This is right after the Great Depression. They didn't know what to think of this, right?
Well, and I add to that, it's also the growing scare of, now Russia is the Soviet Union and it's the Cold War is beginning. So yeah, you're right. It's a very tumultuous time.
Yeah, 100%. There you go, right? So they're taking a lot of things seriously at this point. But the one thing that I will say is there were two projects, government projects. There was Project Blue Book, which everybody's heard of because everybody uses it in an incorrect manner, and there was Project Sign. Now, between the years, I'm not exactly sure what the years are, but take my word for it. The 1940s to the 1950s, we'll just say that to be conservative. There wasn't a lot of pushback, but they came up with something. And this is a government entity, keep in mind. So this isn't just some Joe Blow off the street of LA, California, fucking, whatever. But anyways, they came up with something and they said, yes, we have reviewed 12,000 UFO cases. And 1,000 of them, that's a pretty good statistic in my mind. 1,000 of them are inexcusable. We don't know what they are. This is what they said. We don't know what they are. It's likely that they are of extraterrestrial origin because we don't know what they are. That is the highly probability. There's a probability that they're this, there's a probability that they're that, but the higher probability is that they are of extraterrestrial origin because we don't know what to claim them as. This was the 1940s. So, I mean, in my opinion, taking that all into consideration, I don't know how you could excuse that. I really don't. I mean, I could go down a rabbit hole and say with today's technology in 2020, there was a video in Brazil where they were filming this and they were fucking you know, it was a miss, who knows, this, that, and the other. But in the 1940s, when this was all going down, when this was 100% UFO mania, I don't know how you can excuse it. I really don't know how you can excuse it.
Can I expand on that right
Yeah,
quick?
Dustin?
I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
please.
So Roswell aside, let's skip to present day, and let's consider the witnesses, people with high credentials, people who are extremely credible. One name that comes to mind is Commander David Fravor, who we all know who he is, the guy who witnessed the Tic Tac deal. And so this guy has the top of all top security clearances. He's a commander of a fighter pilot squadron. This is a guy who you would let take your grandmother out to lunch and you wouldn't have to worry about her. And so we have to consider these guys. The whistleblower, David Grutch, or whatever his name is, highest credentials, and they go before Congress and testify. We have to really take that in consideration, and it's not some redneck in a trailer park, you know, in Alabama. These are guys who the cream of the crop, and so we have to consider that, and so, you know, I think we're beyond the point. Well, what's the saying we all hear in social media now? We're beyond the point. Conspiracy theories are no longer conspiracy theories. They're truths now, and so we have to consider that. One thing, and I'm not trying to be a buzzkill, and y'all might kick me off for saying this, but we all wonder what's going on. I'm fascinated with it. We have, again, someone else credible. I read the book Extraterrestrial by Avi Loeb, the Harvard astrophysicist, who considered that the Oumuamua it's called the light cell hypothesis, or light cell theory rather, where, you know, this was intelligent designed, and the way it accelerated, the way it de-accelerated, the way it went around the sun, so many things saying it wasn't natural. And again, someone credible. But anyway, let me get back to what I was saying. You probably want to, like, okay, well, Dustin, there's no point for you even being here, so get your ass out of here. As humans, we tend to overlook problems that are right in front of our faces. So, like, for example, maybe America, maybe I can't speak for the rest of the world, but in America, we have a homeless problem. We have a hunger problem. We have this problem, that problem. Yet we send billions of dollars to the Ukraine. And so one thing that has my attention, and I'll get back to the UFO deal in just a moment. One thing that has my attention, I see these articles, read these articles that AI is going to destroy us. It's literally, we're talking about Skynet shit, Terminator stuff, that humans will be extinct in, you know, 10 years, maybe 15 years, maybe 5 years, and that AI is growing sentient, it's getting a conscience, and it's going to start making decisions for itself, and it's going to start programming itself, and it's going to start building itself. So my whole question on the UFO deal is, yeah, I believe in life elsewhere, but my direction of thinking is we probably are concerned about the wrong things. We're probably, we shouldn't be concerned about the war in Ukraine. We should be concerned about veterans in the United States killing themselves at an alarming rate. Yet we don't focus our energy on the problem that is right in front of us. And so I wonder, and just my way of thinking, I believe AI is what we should, not this podcast. I believe AI. So NASA, how many millions of dollars were spent? NASA just released this report. I think it was today, in fact. NASA put out their findings that, I didn't read it in its entirety, but, it's too early to tell. We can't say for sure that there's intelligent life out there. We can't say for sure that there's UFOs. But I'm wondering, my way of thinking, I'm more concerned about AI destroying humanity, or I would be more concerned about AI destroying humanity than I would be worried about UFOs. So I'm not canceling myself from this podcast. I promise. I'm not about to hang up on you guys. So the question would be, are UFOs, are they malevolent or benevolent? Are they going to kill us or are they going to come in peace? And so I wouldn't be so much worried that, they're here to. Fact is, if they're going to kill our asses, they would have already done it. We would be toast. If they have the technology to get here, we'd already be their slaves. I mean, so.
Well, so I'm not kicking you off the podcast by any means. Actually, those were great comments. But back to the point. I think the one thing I'm going to interrupt you on, though, and then turn it over to everybody else is, so, going back to Devin's point, the 1940s, that's when this whole UFO phenomenon really started. And we see this, portrayed in our science fiction and our media, right? And there are a couple different science fiction, novels or, books, like series that I really like because I think the author does a good job of talking about space travel, or they present an alternative perspective of how, life is developed, right? So David Brin is one of those with the Uplift series. I'm going to screw up this other author and I'm going to have to figure it out and leave a link below. But kind of to your point, when you're talking AI, Dustin, and, back to Devin's point, and we'll come into everybody else. But we're assuming that aliens would be, I can't remember if it was Devin or Redbeard. We're assuming, like the Independence Day aliens physically attacking us. Well, so again, I'm thinking of some other science fiction authors where the antagonist, the aliens, the evil species doesn't operate that way. They operate completely different because they're a different species. So they have a different viewpoint of how to do warfare. There's one series that I'm thinking of that I kind of was a little disappointed at the end because it was anticlimactic because I wanted to have some big space battle. But then you just find out it's like, again, Devin, Paul, everybody's already mentioned it. Well, Redbeard, to your point, what if it's something that's more like, the Thing, and it just takes us over, or it's an infection and we all, slowly go absolutely crazy. If I'm an alien species and I'm that advanced, why am I going to come at you with kinetic energy? Like, I'm just going to do something and I'll watch you guys kill yourself. So, Dustin, I don't think that's a negative point. I think to me, it kind of also goes to we don't know what we don't know. And if I'm that technologically advanced, okay, maybe I could destroy your whole planet with one bomb. But is that really what I want to do? Maybe, we don't know what their thought process is because there's... Okay, go ahead.
I was just thinking about the missile silos, the nuclear missile silos, where the story is UFOs appeared over the base, I think in North Dakota.
Well, numerous locations.
Yeah. And actually armed all the missiles and then took them offline.
Yeah. We lost control of them.
Yes. And then
back to
it took off.
And back to what everybody else has said. So this is testimony from people who even trusted with these nuclear devices. Yeah. But now suddenly we're going to discount them like, oh, he's just crazy. Well, if he's crazy, why was he ever entrusted with these, and why is he still in charge? That doesn't make any sense. That was kind of one of Devin's points, right? So, but I'm going to bring it back to everybody here, and I kind of want to go to Redbeard. He's been silent for a little while. But Redbeard, what are your thoughts on that? So I'm just trying to say, kind of taking where Devin started. The 1940s was a huge era for us as a species to start really becoming more aware. And maybe that was because of World War II. I mean, we had the Foo Fighters. We've got the all these different things that are going on. But then this cultural thing happens. A shit ton of people start seeing things. Many of these people are credible. Devin's point, and then again, whether it's Blue Beat or Blue Book, whatever the project was, and then hey, here's 1,000 things we can't account for. And then if you look at smart people doing science fiction, and then they're saying, well, what about this? Why does it have to be this way? Why couldn't it be this way? And so I'm just kind of throwing that out there. Again, UFOs, little green men, what does that even mean? That's just a stereotypical perception of what we're either being fed by Hollywood, the government. It could be something much different than we even can comprehend. Right.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna start off first by saying, you know, as it pertains to like, I don't know, I guess, and if we're looking at like, if we're going to perceive like a superior uh, race of beings out there, if you will, dude, if you really wanted to take down mankind, all you have to do is introduce some type of otherworldly bacteria. Yeah, I mean, my God, we have a hard enough time dealing with the basic cold. So in the end of the day, all you would have to do is introduce a bacteria that would get people sick, to which we would have no understanding of, no cure, no antidote, anything like that. And that in and of itself would be enough to, if it doesn't wipe us out, it would neuter us to a point of inefficiency and incapability to even be able to respond. And like I said, dude, like all it could take, and it wouldn't even have to be by their hand. All it would take is us visiting somewhere else, picking up something that was like it was like a bacteria or like a spore that came from like the dust or the dirt from somewhere else or whatever it might be. And that's all it takes. And then everybody starts getting sick and nobody understands why or how or what, by something that we don't understand. And Mark, when you brought up something that was underwhelming for a book you had read, my first thought was War of the Worlds, when everybody finds out like, oh, if you give them a cold, they basically like they're done. Like, so when he said it was kind of underwhelming, like that's what I thought you were referring to. I was like, both the book this theory for inducing a common.
Well, you must be saying something very interesting because suddenly your connection and you're frozen. So let's come over here to Dustin in the meantime here. Yeah, you're frozen. We can't even hear you. But Dustin, do you want?
Oh.
Are you back now, Redbeard?
Yeah, I think so.
Nothing. Much. A little bit, but we've obviously pissed off the internet god. So.
Well,
the ATF.
If I may, real quick, Mark, if you can still hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. We got you now.
Okay. So real quick, I'm not gonna say who it was. He's he was a friend of mine back in the day. But he worked security forces at the 148th Fighter Wing, and me and him had discussions about things that went on up at that fighter base, and he had said that there is an area reserved for special projects that was not all access, but there was an area specifically for other people up there. And there's some shit that they dealt with up there. Now, I don't know if it was something of our doing or if it was anything else, but there were certain instances where between him and then somebody else that I had known, there were interactions with some individuals up there at the base that were very interesting, to say the least, in terms of their security protocols. And they it seems as if there was something that was fairly guarded up there beyond the regular F-16 hangars and stuff like that. That being said, the Great Lakes has also been a hotbed of unexplained activity for several decades. And I also know this through another person that I was friends with back in the day, and his dad was used to work for Strategic Air Command back in the day. And there were several goings on and several sightings of unidentified craft in what almost seemed like skirmishes over the Great Lakes some decades ago. And after these skirmishes would happen, as soon as they would come in, they would disappear, and neither the pursuit planes or the object they were following would be seen again. So there's a lot of unexplained activity in the Great Lakes area that I don't think people realize, which to my deductions, and I could be totally wrong about this, but I firmly believe somewhere up here there are one or maybe several black sites for whatever purpose that nobody knows about that is being done up here. Because you got to think about it, it's fairly isolated up here, you know. I mean, of all the places in the United States, we are a pretty isolated area. So,
Well, I mean, black sites do exist, and
yes,
I mean,
they do exist.
and you usually do try to find a place where you can tuck them in where it's not going to,
Yeah.
Well, I'll just shut up on that one right there. But
Yeah.
back
Well-
to the kind of science fiction aspect of, again, UFOs and little green men. I know Paul's got a bunch of things he's been chomping at the bit. I just tried looking it up on my phone, and apparently I don't have it on my Audible account anymore. But I'll try to find it, and I'll leave a link in here. But again, going to what we just said, there's some pretty good science fiction writers out there that are like demonstrating a great grasp of, like, whether it's interstellar travel. So I just mentioned David Brin and his whole how life can develop. So that's this Uplift series. It's really good. David Brin has written a lot of great science fiction, but the Uplift trilogy was actually 6 books, and it gives you a completely different perspective on, well, how does, and it doesn't rule out, and I'm just going to throw this out there for just me and anybody listening, it doesn't rule out Christianity, it doesn't rule out God, it just gives you a different perspective on how creatures can evolve. And then there's Jack Campbell, who writes more action-based books. But to our point, it talks about how would humanity deal with encountering. It really starts off with humanity has expanded. We're in a couple different solar systems, blah, 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 at war with each other, because that's what we're good at that. But through all this process, we come to realize that there's other species out there. And to this whole point, and one of them, the way the species works, they're called the enigmas. They actually don't ever want to be found. They don't ever want to be known about. They take such great precautions to prevent anyone from knowing a single thing about them. So back to where Devin kind of kicked this off. What does that even mean? I mean, it could be, the body. It could be a microbe that infects us. It could be the thing. It could be, we don't even know what alien life really even is. But we go back to Hollywood and we say it's green men and like spinning saucer shaped discs, the day the earth stood still type of shit. It could be something completely different. On that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul. We'll come around to Dustin and Devin here and get their thoughts on whether it's a comment to what Redbeard was just saying or what I just threw out there. We don't know what we don't know. I think that's my big takeaway. Actually, I'm going to give one last thing for everybody to maybe comment on. Again, I think Devin started it, with the whole Roswell, commentary. Like, we trust these guys to be flying nuclear weapons around, but we don't trust them to know the difference with a weather balloon. Well, so how then should we actually even listen to or trust the government who says, hey, we're going to have a website now, and we're going to start releasing this information? Like, I'm already like calling bullshit on it. Like, and I haven't seen what they're doing because I'm like, who the hell are you?
Mark, I've said this several times, and I believe that, and I believe it's been echoed by more people than just myself or you, but to every good lie, there's usually a semblance of truth in there somewhere. What that truth is, I don't know. I don't have a definitive answer on that. I don't devote my life to studying UFOs or unidentified organisms or craft, but I will say that it is kind of weird that now of all times that they are going so public about this, that they're going to develop a segment or a web page or whatever to this particular type of thing. I do think that it could be used for a lot of misdirection. But at the same time, like I said, I think that within every good lie or with every good half truth, there's usually some semblance of a truth. So they may be providing enough of a truth for people to be, to come away just like, okay, I can accept that, while also providing just enough of a lie to, obscure perhaps what else may be present that they're not telling us about.
Yeah, damn right. And that is exactly how you do it within the USG, because I was a part of that. So, but Paul,
that's some .gov shit.
Yeah, that's some .gov shit. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't have a lockdown right now, but yeah, the timing is seems to be snowballing. What I guess they would call disclosure or whatever they're pretending that to
Yeah.
be. Other nations, Brazil, I don't know, others have had supposed disclosure with some interesting stuff.
Well, and Greer has done
Greer,
his,
yes,
he's done his
Greer.
stuff. Yep.
So, and I Redbeard mentioned Great Lakes and all the doings here.
I saw you perk up a little bit at that, Paul. So as soon as I started, I said I saw you perk up a little bit when I started mentioning the goings on with the Great Lakes. I saw you light up like a Christmas tree. So I'm really curious to see that or see what you have to say.
Yeah, there's a whole USO, unidentified subversive object. So, and stories of a UFO flying, going on edge, going under the water.
Yeah.
And underwater bases and all that. But if you're curious what's going on in the world of Minnesota and UFOs, there is an organization. I don't know if you've heard of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. There are some pretty grounded people who do investigations, and they have meetings on Zoom as well as in person in the Twin Cities. But just look up Minnesota MUFON and
so the organization is MUFON. Yeah. If people aren't familiar with it.
Yeah,
already.
MUFON.
Yep.
So I thought I'd mention that.
Cool.
So that's all I got off the top of my head.
That was your response to what Redbeard just threw out? Redbeard just threw down like some serious comments.
Oh, I know.
Devin, are you still with us, brother?
Oh, of course.
All right. So you heard what Redbeard was talking about. We're kind of bringing it near the end because we're not going to solve any of this stuff tonight. That's not the purpose of the podcast.
Yeah.
It's just to have a larger general conversation. Here, near the end of the podcast, I'm going to throw out my 2 cents. I don't trust anything the government's going to tell me right now. and Redbeard, to your point, you talked about some other foreign governments that have quote unquote done disclosure. I'm probably a little bit more prone to kind of agree with, or listen to what a foreign government has to say, but it's still government, and no matter how you say that, like in whatever language, gobierno or, eine Reich or government, whatever language you're speaking in, I'm pretty distrustful of government. And especially after the most recent unpleasantness, and then now everybody's coming out and saying, forget all that other stuff we told you. Now it's got to be this thing. I'm like, you ass clowns. So basically on that note right there, it just is, I'm hesitant to kind of, I don't know. I guess I'm just hesitant to really, I'm not going to go to that website. I'm not going to listen to it. And even if, honestly, here, I guess I'm just kind of throwing this out there. It's going to have to be like the most obvious disclosure. Like, here it is. Irrefutable proof that whether it's interdimensional or interstellar, it's going to have to be something that just, otherwise, whatever the government has to say, I'm not even going to listen to, And Dustin brought this up a little bit earlier, like there's some really good witnesses and some really solid people who are talking about stuff. And, I'm going to bring Dustin up here full screen and give him a chance to talk about this. But again, I'm not trying to discredit anybody. I think there's a lot to be said, and Devin brought it up too, the guy who first reported it, out in Washington, he's a pilot. He's seen these things. He's trained, we're putting these, Dustin, we're putting our faith and our trust in these people's capabilities. But does that necessarily mean that some of them can't lie and distort the truth or do, like, hey, I know what I saw, but you are telling me I'm under orders to say something different. Dustin.
Yeah, but
I'm not trying to throw a wrench in order. What do you think?
No, you're fine. In order for them to lie, I mean, what will they gain by lying? They're not gaining anything. They're risking their careers, and specifically these, fighter pilots or whatever. And by coming forward, by lying about it, they don't stand to gain anything, but they stand to lose everything. And so, it blows me away. I get on Drudge Report app on my phone, and in the past 2 or 3 years, how many times has UFOs been in the headlines? And that blows me away because 20 years ago, you didn't talk about it. It wasn't something you talked about. You were crazy or whatever. And so I think they're trying to, I think this is all leading up to a formal disclosure. And I think Paul even mentioned it earlier. And
hold on 1 second. You think this is leading to a formal disclosure?
yeah, absolutely. I think they're trying to get us used to the fact that, what's the word? We're being desensitized. Whatever desensitized. And so we're used to hearing about it. So when disclosure comes out, we're like, oh shit, yeah, we already knew about that. You're telling us something we've known for the past 5 years. Imagine if, it wasn't on mainstream news. Imagine that there was no Commander David Fravor, Tic Tac, or Avi Loeb, or anyone, and they dropped the bombshell on us, said, hey, we've got contact. We made contact. And so what would that do to humanity? Well, first of all, it wouldn't change my religious convictions. If anything, it might reinforce them. But a lot of people would say, oh, gosh, so what I've been reading in the Bible all along is not true. And then I think if you drop the bomb, people are going to wake up and say, you know what? I'm not going to make my mortgage payment this month. I'm going to go out and party. And I think I think there would be mass suicides because what people thought they knew, they obviously didn't know. I think contact's already been made. I think our government's been in contact with them for years. And and this isn't defending our government, but how would you, we have the right to know, but how would you drop disclosure without causing mass panic, without causing economies to collapse? And so they're trying to ease us into it. So we're getting fed a little bit at a time. And maybe this David Gretsch guy, this whistleblower, maybe he's one of them, meaning he's in with the government, and it was intended for him to, okay, we're going to tell them a little bit and get them just to believe a little bit more. Who knows, man? It's a damn crazy world that we live in. So I think that's all I've got on that.
Well, I'm gonna bring this over to Paul here. Sorry, no, there we go. I just had to get this kind of set up. There we go. All right. I know you want to respond to that, but the only thing I'm just going to say to Dustin though is, I agree with what Dustin just said, but I'm still skeptical. What will it take for there to be full disclosure? I mean, Dustin, I don't want to speak for you. It seems to me that you're saying that we're being slow walked into disclosure. I don't want to misrepresent you. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Well, so I am, but what would the outcome of disclosure be? So if you were in government, let's say this is a way to say, okay, all the countries of the world, we need to band together because we're not now we're no longer separate sovereign countries. Now we're one world, and there's other worlds out there. And you could look at this from a religious aspect and say, okay, well, this is when the Antichrist is going to come in, or this is when one world government's going to come in, or whatever George Bush talked about years ago. This is the time when, and I think Ronald Reagan even said it. I think Ronald Reagan gave a speach that said, hey,
don't steal my thunder. I just pulled a Paul and I was like raising my hand, I was like, what? I wanted to bring up Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan has that famous speech at the UN.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was raising my hand to do it, but anyway, you're straight, you're spot on, Dustin.
Yeah. So we're different, I think, societally than we were in the 40s, and there's a story.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Redbeard, are we different?
Say it again, Paul. I'm sorry.
What was that, Mark?
Paul, what did you just say about now as opposed to the 40s?
Oh,
I was saying that
we're different.
We're different psychologically,
yeah.
Than we were in the 40s in our mindset. And all that.
Yeah, and thank you, Jeremy. You're picking up the joke. I was like, "What? Hang on a second. We're different from where we're."
Well, I mean,
what?
hey, look. To be fair, and this might grind people's stones the wrong way, but is it too far to say that perhaps that we had a chance at reasonable communication, but they look at us and they're like, dude, like they can't even figure out like who they're gonna be one day to the next. These people are so delusional. They think that they are, a cat one day, and then they want to be a human another day, and then they can't figure out which side of the spectrum they're on the next day. They want to be half man, half one, like it, and I've thought about that, like maybe the fact that like we haven't seen more of this, because I mean we're still a young race of beings, but we're not that young, and it's
Well,
like
and I'm glad you just. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I
yeah.
just wanted to bring it up, and I'd forgotten about it. I wanted to mention this again earlier. One of you were saying something, and I just wanted to point out, it's like, my God, as a species, relative to again anything else, we've been here for the equivalent of like a second. Like
absolutely.
Yeah, just a drop in a bucket.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about like is there life on other planets, dude? Do you know how long planets have been around? The solar system, the galaxies.
Kind of a long time.
Yeah,
so to answer your question to Paul,
not only that, not only have we only been around, like so for who we are, we measured in terms of our human existence. Which is maybe at times a 40-year lifespan, maybe now it's like at a 60 or 80-year lifespan. Dude, that's nothing in the grander scheme of things. 12,000 years ago. That's not even a blink of an eye in the larger galactic perspective.
Right.
It's absolutely nothing.
And just to kind of finish it off, but like, look, to kind of answer your joking question, like, honestly, maybe they don't think we are actually intelligent enough because we can't make up our minds as to who we are. Like, maybe they evaluated us from afar. And they're like, okay, these people have some aptitude back in the 40s and 50s, which is maybe or well before, right? Because we've talked about it going on well before that. But maybe now that they're looking at things, they're just like, dude, like how did they go from people who were innovative and moving in a forward motion and people that were developing to we can't even figure out who we're going to be on Sunday, like
your comments were really making Dustin's head shake. So
like there's an aptitude thing there to where maybe we're just not considered smart enough for them to give a fuck about us anymore.
Hey, what do you always hear? Like, we're sitting there saying, well, why haven't, other species contacted us? Like, well, do we sit and talk to
dumb as shit?
Yeah. Maybe we're just ants, But Dustin, I saw you really vigorously nodding your head.
Well, I mean, I think we're so much further along now than we were back in the 40s and 50s.
Oh yeah.
By the way, I must have pissed Devin off because he left. So anyway, or he's not on here. But also think in a lot of ways, you get so smart that you get dumb. And so in a lot of ways, we are dumber now than what we were back then. And
idiot savant, is that the appropriate term?
But yeah, absolutely. But
no, we are not idiot savants. No, Dustin's point is we've just gotten stupid. We
have gotten stupid.
Yeah.
And Redbeard, like you're talking about, I mean, we can't even figure out gender. I mean, gender it's proven, it's a fact. There's no gray area. It's black and white. Biologically, that's the way it is. We can't figure that shit out. I mean, it's really the younger generations, the 20-somethings, or what. It's getting worse and worse. It's really like I see something on TV, I shake my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to be joking. But I do think
I just got to throw this out, Dustin. Sorry, I've got to find the name of this science fiction. It's a 3-book series. It goes to exactly what you were just saying. This is how we are in the book, in the science fiction book. This is how we are defeated as a species by an alien race.
Exactly.
It's what does. They don't come down with laser guns. Pew pew pew.
Yeah.
it's they make us do crazy shit like Dustin just said, and we destroy.
But it's
ourselves.
like it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with AI. It's like, so we've become so smart that we're doing dumb shit. So just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do it. So
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I know that's gonna be a T-shirt. I'm sorry, Dustin. You just created your own T-shirt.
Yeah.
We're so smart. We do dumb shit. Whatever.
it's like
right.
it's like Chinesium.
Chinesium. Yeah.
Chinesium.
Well, it's
that was good.
And,
All right,
and
hey,
quickly
we got
to
to
your
do
point,
Paul. Paul's been
Yeah.
chomping at the bit here, and then with everyone's permission, here's what I would think. We're at 1 hour and 30.
oh yeah,
Let's give
yep.
Paul a chance to chime in
I
on
will
what
wrap
we're
it
just
up.
talking about right there. Again, we're just talking out loud right now. So, boys and
Mhm.
girls, if you're watching this, we're not trying to give you the answer to whether there
Yeah.
are aliens and little green men and UFOs. That's not the whole point. But
Yeah.
Jeremy, with your permission, what I think is let's let Paul respond,
Yep.
and then give everybody one more,
Kind of
round
like a final note.
comment, and then we'll go into
Yep.
housekeeping.
Yeah,
with the
Roger.
giveaway.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
Paul, it's on you, sir.
So, as I was saying a while ago, we're different critters than we were in the 40s, and there was some commission supposedly, not the Warren Commission was not. It was some other commission whose name I forget. That supposedly where they said if we revealed aliens to the world population,
Yeah, I know you're
everything would fall apart.
They actually said it would be the destruction.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I've heard that before.
Yes. And that to I forgot who was mentioning this, that they're acclimating us to this, and maybe we're at the maturity point now that they can release it and the world won't fall apart. There's even talks about Steven Spielberg's E.T. movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's a
Yep.
story that was a government operation to be part of that process.
Yeah, to get people to start waking up and being more receptive to
Yes,
Yeah.
whether or not, but that's just a thought that's out there. So
Yeah.
I think that's what I have for the moment. Yeah.
Well, but I like where you just left us. Whether maybe we are a little bit more mature. I personally, in my heart of hearts, I feel like we've always been mature. So again, you're right. I don't remember. That's not the Warren Commission that did
No.
it, but whatever that was.
Yeah.
I'm just like, and Dustin's mentioned it. Redbeard's mentioned it. Devin, who unfortunately he's lost his feed and he's gone now. So, and you guys, you got to bounce here too soon, but
Yep.
you have to bounce as well pretty soon. But to that, in my personal humble opinion, I have no problem if the government came out and admitted this and acknowledged this. I'm like, it doesn't destroy my God. It doesn't destroy my worldview.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't change anything from my perspective. So,
Yep.
did we just lose Dustin too? God damn, we're
His
just
screen went
driving
black.
like flies. What the hell's going on here?
That one by one.
Yeah, 1 by 1 or 2 by 2. But
Yeah.
so I actually like what you just said because I don't think so.
Yep.
Again, that commission, I honestly believe that commission has it totally wrong. I think the vast majority of people, even back then, would have been like, "Well, yeah, duh," and obvious because we were already learning about space exploration. That interest was already there. So, all right, now we got Dustin back. Dustin, you heard pretty much most of what we were just talking about. It's okay. You got your mic muted on your side. All right.
Well,
So
yeah.
who wants to
Okay,
kind of
I'm
follow
back.
up on that?
I'm here.
Yeah. So to Paul's point, cousin husband's point, there was this commission. They reached this conclusion. They thought everybody would freak out. I disagree with that completely. Matter of fact, that commission could have come out and said it, and I would have been like, "You guys are full of shit." I don't believe you. So who wants to go in what direction? But we're kind of starting to wrap things up here. Who wants to go
Yeah,
next?
I mean, I think first of all we have the right to know. I think I think some people would freak out. I think, what percentage of the population? 20%, 25. Who the hell knows? I think some people couldn't handle it. I think as a species, I think we can handle it, and I think we're coming up to disclosure. I think it's going to happen. Everyone says, well, it's going to happen 5 years ago, 5 years, 5 years. I think it'll happen within the next 5 years. It's just, gosh, man, there's too much evidence to support that maybe we are being visited. we can handle it. I mean, it's not going to change the way I feel about everything. They announce it at 6 o'clock news. I'm going to get up the next morning and come to work and make boots because I have to. And
Exactly.
so
it doesn't change any of our day-to-day grind. And I love what you just said because it kind of goes back to what Paul's point is. Like I think we are, or maybe it was Redbeard. One of you two just said it. We are more advanced. We are more developed. We are more receptive or perceptive, however you want to say it. Yeah, as a society. Yeah, to Dustin, to your point.
Don't you guys?
I still got to fucking make products and sell gear. Otherwise, I got no milk in my fridge. So unless these little green men are coming down and it's all universal health care and food and whatever, I still got to do what I got to do.
But I think it's like when we find out for sure, without a doubt. I mean, I think we can talk to each other right here and say, well, we don't doubt, but maybe so. But there's still, until it's official, until there is a species identified and there's press conferences, it's on the news. We really don't know. In our hearts, we think we know. But once we do know, how will that trigger our curiosity? We'll want to learn about them. We'll want to be friends with them. We'll want to talk. We'll want to communicate with them. And we'll want to find out what life is like where they're from. And so we'll want to know all these things. And I think part of the human spirit is that we are curious. And because of our curiosity, we create, we develop, we make things, we progress. And that's what humankind has done through the ages. We've progressed. Some of it's not good, a lot of it's bad, but it's only because of our curiosity. Yeah, I look up at the night sky and I wonder what's out there. And I think, man, we're tiny. We're so tiny. There's got to be something else out there. And so I think the majority of people would be curious. I don't think it would ruin life for people. So
I just got to, and I apologize to everybody in the podcast. I'm just going to throw this out there, kind of a point of personal, I'm taking advantage of that. I'm the guy with the mouse and I can control everything. But something Dustin just said, I've just got to say this because this is my root emotional, who I am as a human. Dustin really tapped on this. And I think in this subject about UFOs, aliens, extraterrestrial life, something that really bothers me is we've lost our yearning for exploration. We, as a species, we're
100%. Yep, I concur.
We how are we not already having a small colony on the moon? How do we not already have people having been to Mars? Somehow, for something has happened, and that inquisitive nature. And Dustin, you just brought this out. I mean, I apologize. I'm going to do a little tirade here, but that seems to have been seems to have been beaten down. NASA, NASA's talking about fucking social justice shit dude, you're a space exploration platform. Explore fucking space. Why do we not, do you know how many, to Dustin's point, do you know, in my humble opinion, I would be one of them. I'd be like, yeah, it's a one-way mission. Sure, sounds good. As long as my heart can, and I'm worthwhile and I can contribute, I'll go and do it. Yeah, our ancestors, especially us as Americans, more than any other country in civilization in the history of humanity to this day, we understand that whole individualistic, that shit is going to suck and I'm at the frontier and I have no idea what's, over the next horizon. That's who we are as a people. And yet that seems to be getting drained out of us. And we're not those people anymore. So Dustin, thank you for kicking me in the Jimmy right there, because that's who we used to be as a people, right? And when we're talking about UFOs, what we're really talking about is how are we not exploring shit? Where's the Lewis and Clark of modern day? Where's the Magellan or the Cortez or the Columbus of the modern day? It doesn't exist.
Can I add two things to that? Two quotes. The first quote, and I'm going to go back to Commander David Fravor. After filming Tic Tac or Gimbal, he said, "Oh my gosh, I would love to fly that thing."
Fly that thing, yes.
So there's that curiosity and wanting to go beyond what we know. That's we want to know answers. This is no joke. So I live in proximity of George W. Bush, and I always thought, man, if I ever make George W. Bush a pair of boots and he comes in here, I'm going to say, look, I know you can't talk about this shit, so I'm going to ask you, blink once for yes, blink twice for no. Do aliens exist? And, he'd probably chuckle. But the second point that I want to make was, I don't remember the astrophysicist, maybe it was Carl Sagan or someone once said, if humans don't get off Earth, we're going to be extinct, meaning an asteroid is going to take our asses out. And so we've got to get beyond Earth. We've got to get beyond our solar system. And who's to say that life on another planet, they're not faced with the same thing? And so maybe they're, 1,000,000 years or 1,000 years, however, more technologically advanced than we are, and they found a way to get off the rock that they're stuck on. Guys, we're stuck on Earth. That's all there is to it. We can't go any further than the moon.
I don't want to distract this. I need to come over to Paul and Redbeard, but to Dustin's last point, I mean, even just from a simple survival perspective, it is in our interest because, again, I think it was like, I'm going to screw this up, but it was like somewhere in the last decade, we had a solar storm that missed us by the Arctic equivalent of a bullet going right past your ear. And if it would have hit us, it would have put us back to the Stone Ages. So and I'm sure Sagan and many others have actually said, because it's too obvious not to say, we have to get off of Earth because there's always the possibility of something bad happening. And if the species is to survive and thrive, and that's, again, I guess that's kind of my point. Why don't we already have a colony on it's mind-boggling to me, but I'll shut up.
Guys, I promise I'll shut up and I'll close with this. I won't say anything else after this. There's another quote.
Oh no, you got more to say.
Simple.
We're not done yet.
The quote is, I don't remember who said it. We are either alone in the universe or we're not alone, and both thoughts are equally as frightening. There you go. I'm done.
No, that's a great segue. Why don't we come over to Redbeard? Okay, let's come to Redbeard, and then we'll come over to you, and then we'll do our kind of start wrapping it up. All right, Redbeard, seriously, sir, I apologize. You've been a little bit quiet. It's been a lot going on.
Well, I sometimes, and I've said this before, Mark, but I like to kind of sit back and listen to what people have to say, because it helps me formulate kind of not necessarily a response, but formulate thoughts in my head. And I think what we've run into as a species is we have started to take unimportant things and make them important despite the fact that they're not. We have trivialized basic things that we need, and we've made untrivial non-necessity things. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is the fact that, like, things that we know we need to do to support and sustain our life have become trivialized. You don't need to do that. Somebody else will provide it for you. So our sense of survival has been stripped away. And you see this more or less in cities than anywhere else, but it's part of the human condition. We have stripped down and we've laid bare our human condition to the point to where it's become null and void, if you will. We've had conversations about this before, to where you have people that are like, oh, if everything falls apart, I'm just going to walk into the woods. And it's like, dude, you can't even change your own tire on your car. Like, how do you expect to walk out into the woods? How do you even expect to make that walk to the woods when you couldn't even change your own tire? Our sense of self-determination has been stripped. Our sense of perseverance has been stripped. We have changed the language and how we address each other and how we communicate to a point to where it has become so oversimplified, so petty, and so simple that it has no value. It has no meaning. The idea that people say to each other, hey, I love you, but they know today that they can get away with saying it without having any emotional connection to that phrase. You have people that walk around and call each other brothers or sisters, even if they're not blood, and it doesn't mean anything. We have taken away the meanings of things in the intent behind our actions, and we've made it to a point to where a survival mechanism, or understanding how to be violent is inherently bad and can't be used for good. We have done all of these different things, which I feel factor into that idea of wanting to explore and find adventure. And we've basically marginalized, minimized, and absolutely destroyed this part of our human condition and behavior. And if you take away what makes us human, you leave a husk of our former selves. And I firmly believe is why we haven't been able to amount to shit. To me, people talk about all of this technological progression, but for what? I mean, in the end of the day, show me one thing that is original today. Show me one thing that has not just been a pure copy of something else. Show me one thing to where somebody's genuinely innovated, and I'll change my mind. But in the end of the day, like, we as a species are so we have gone to a point to where I feel like we're retroactively going backwards because of the fact that we have stripped away and laid bare who we are as a species, because we're more concerned about treating people with absolute kindness 100% of the time and stripping away labels. And yet some people have the nerve to be like, well, if you don't address me as she, her, he, him, or they, them, or whatever, it's like you just said something about labels, yet you want to put yourself in a box. Like, you are absolutely destroying what it is to be human. And when you do that, how can you have an expectation of innovation, adventure, or exploration? We have to address our problems here first and get back a sense of self. And that's not necessarily just in a national point of view. It's not just, but as humans, we have got to figure out what the fuck we're trying to do before we can even endeavor to go anywhere else. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I love where you just went that. I'll turn it over to these guys to give their final comments. I wrote a note down as you were talking too, but it brings me back to that Ronald Reagan speech, how we could actually be united. I'm here to tell you, I've served my country for over 30 years, so I'm not going to listen to anybody tell me that, I'm not patriotic, or, or I'm a this or I'm that. That's bullshit to me. So, not to turn this into a different conversation, but it's on that note. I'm a human. I believe in America, but I believe in the human race. I believe, I think, and I kind of already alluded to this, I think one of the things that has me as a human, as an American, the thing I'm the most disappointed about is, like, how is it that our flag, because our flag represents everybody, we are the melting pot, e pluribus unum, right? That it says it all right there. How are we not already on the moon? How are we already not on Mars? How are we already not doing, to what Jeremy, to your point, how are we not striving for these things? We are, in my humble opinion, when it comes to UFOs and little green men, we're not actually opening ourselves up to our potential. We're pushing it down. We're keeping it bottled up. We are not doing and allowing ourselves to realize that, hey, okay, I don't like the fact that he drinks Coors Light. He doesn't like the fact that I drink Miller Lite. Really? That's what we're going to be concerned about? Like, holy fucking shit. We're missing our potential. We're losing that. And Jeremy, and I'm just going to end it with this. And this is the other sad thing about not realizing our potential, or realizing and being honest with who we are as a species. And somebody, whoever brought up Joe Rogan earlier in the podcast, but Joe Rogan is on a podcast talking about, again, if there's aliens, whenever we see these, eyewitness, representations of aliens, their eyes are always focusing, their eyes are always forward in their skulls, their well, I guess let's call them their heads. And that boils into, and this was pretty genius, it boils into a herbivore versus a carnivore.
Predator versus prey.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who? I'm sorry, I was just looking at the camera. Who just said that?
Dustin.
I just said predator. Typically, prey have eyes on the side of their head so they can see. And
So if this is true, that these are the other types of species that if this is real and real little green men exist, Well, that we might have, to Jeremy's point, we might have some problems in the future. Again, it could be more of a scientific, like, okay, I'm not going to come and invade you. It's not, Independence Day. I'm going to use like a virus or whatever. But if it's not, and to Jeremy's point, and if we are limiting our potential and limiting who we really are as a species and what we can accomplish, and being a benevolent species doesn't mean, Jeremy, you don't have your ticker up like you normally do.
Yeah.
Peaceful, not harmless, or whatever
Yeah.
it says. Yeah, nowhere in life does it say that I'm supposed to be a weak and a pushover. And if there are other species, shouldn't we? And so I'm thinking of David Brin now. Now I'm kind of, this is my final closing comments. In the Uplift trilogy that he's talking about, humans are we're the newcomers on the scene in this, there's 3 universes, that, I'm not to give too much of the books away, but we're the newcomers. But we're the ones who've already uplifted other species and made them sentient. And we suddenly realize, like, holy shit, there's like multiple species, and intelligent life has been out there for millions of years. But our primal instincts, who we are as humans, makes us like a threat. You got to read the books. It's awesome. It's, to Jeremy's point, it's this feral. Matter of fact, everybody refers to us as wolves. Like, the wolflings. That's what humans are called. And I think, to Jeremy's point, there's something to be said for that. And we should never forget that. Whether there are UFOs and little green men or not, those aren't negative character traits. Those are positive character traits.
I just want to add something real quick, Mark, and then I'll be done. But I think, people have this obsession with aliens and stuff like that, but I think because we've forgotten so much of who we are as a species, we have become alien to ourselves.
Wow. That's a pretty goddamn good way to end your comments for the night right there. Yeah. All right. Let's
Didn't mean to one up you, Mark. Sorry.
Even Dustin with that big ass beard of his, I can see a smile creeping across his face right there. All right, let's bring it over to Paul and Dustin. Final comments from you two fine gentlemen, and then Redbeard, that buys you a little time to get your question prepped for the giveaway. You guys want to do rock, paper, scissors, or who wants to go first?
I'll go.
There it is. I guess
I don't have.
Paul's going first there, Dustin.
Don't have much to add here. It's a good wrap up. I was going to say about disclosure, though. If we're in with the aliens at the government level and treaties or whatever, we know what's going on. Disclosure is one thing. What
do you mean? So if the government's in with this, then
if we make contact with aliens and communication and all that, and we disclose that is one thing.
Okay.
There's the other possibility that the government has evidence there's stuff going on. They don't have connections. They don't have control of it. They don't understand it, but they know it's there. If they disclose that would be a whole different kettle of fish.
Because bureaucrats would see that makes us look weak.
And not only that, the people, of the earth, of the U.S., whatever, will say, "Oh, there's this big threat. These creatures, they're abducting us. There's all these things happening, and you can't help us." That is a bad taste to it too.
Well,
so that's maybe a reason why disclosure has not happened.
Yeah,
which is only because as humans we're unwilling to accept the fact that there's things that are outside of our control.
Yes,
like the weather, or an earthquake, or there's shit that'll kill me 6 days to Sunday.
Right.
And there's nothing I can do about it. Should it happen?
Yeah.
Is that what you're kind of saying?
They would expect the government to be helping them or something, and it's not there. It's like, sorry guys, there's things outside of our control.
And so if the government were to ever acknowledge that would cause unrest or something?
Potentially unknown, but that is one potential concern. That would be a reason they'd be holding off on disclosure.
Because they're afraid of how people react to the fact that there's something out there and we don't know what it is. And we don't know how to deal with it.
And they're messing with us.
They're turning on and off our nuclear weapons and shit like that. Yeah, okay.
So
all right.
That's all.
That's all you got?
That's all.
That's
I
a
got.
pretty good ending right there. That's kind of ominous, by the way. That's not.
Yeah.
That's yeah. That was a good evil.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cue the Twilight Zone music, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, seriously, what the hell? I think I've seen it in a couple like science, science fiction movies.
Yeah,
Or something.
want to be mad scientist. There you go.
Well, you did say you wanted to be a mad scientist.
Yeah.
Well, you are in the mad scientist dojo right now. So
Oh, thank you.
you got that going.
All right.
Dustin, comments, sir. Wherever you want to go. It's
Well, again, I do believe contact's already happened. To what degree, who knows? According to Stephen Greer, he talks to them all the time. He goes up and shines a laser up in the sky and he communicates with them. I'm not so sure about that, but maybe so. I don't think there's going to be riots in the street with disclosure, but as Paul said, yeah, there very well could be two types of disclosure. The first being, yeah, we've made contact, or the second, we know they're here, but whatever the case may be. I just don't see how it can be bad. Again, if they can get here, just imagine medically what they could do. Just imagine the positives for the human species medically. I mean, one little zap and they can cure cancer or whatever the case may be. Again, I think if they were here on bad terms, we'd be dead already. So I don't know. I don't have much else to add to that. I mean, I do like the direction the conversation went in tonight. We could have got into conspiracy theory. We could have got into some pretty freaky stuff, and so we didn't. And everyone's got their ideas, and maybe that's a podcast for another time. But I'm happy we didn't discuss things that just we all may get visited tonight by men in black or black helicopters or whatever, but who knows how deep this goes. I'm done.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you just said that I really like, and I just got to chime in on it, is that we didn't get. We're just being humans. We're just a bunch of guys talking about things. Devin was here earlier, and I guarantee there's a million other people who are having these same kind of conversations or these same thoughts, and that's all it is. I mean, it wasn't about trying to prove or disprove whether there's little green men or the government's coming there and bring it up. No, this was, in my opinion, a pretty generally well-rounded and sane, not insane, but sane conversation about and what would this mean and what would it look like, and I know Jeremy. As I turn it over to you, I don't want to speak for you, but I know I speak for you here too. You love this subject just as much as I do. I could sit and talk about this for hours.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good subject, and it allows a lot. It allows enough openings to be able to. And I know some people hate the word speculate, but I mean, isn't that what we do 90% of the time, anyways? We speculate to kind of form opinions and to kind of form at least a pathway to want to investigate something. It's so I feel like some of this is a great amount of speculation. Some of it might be anecdotal, some of it might be conjecture, others might be actually very backed with evidence. And I think that's the beauty of this conversation, is unlike so many other conversations that we've had, whether it's like the war in Ukraine or whatever else that has a very, very serious tone to it, which has a lot of, supporting evidence one way or the other, whatever the case is. Like this, they're not as open of a topic. They seem to be a little bit more taboo once you start getting outside that openness. But anytime you deal with anything otherworldly or extraterrestrial or whatever the case is, it leaves a decent amount open to be able to have a decent conversation. My only detracting point to this whole thing is we can't all be sitting around a campfire and sipping our brews or coffee or eating food or something like that, because I mean, this is definitely a campfire conversation. So
well, you get bored talking about nothing against sports, but you get bored talking about Britney Spears and Kim Kardashian's ass. I mean, there's more to it than just that. There's more to life than pop culture. I feel so sorry for. Well, I don't know that I feel sorry for them, but there's people who are only capable of thinking, or they can't think beyond what the media tells them or what they see on primetime TV.
Yep.
They're not capable of they're not up for suggestion that there's other things out there than that. And personally, and this isn't bragging, we don't watch TV in my home. We don't watch sports. We don't watch TV. We don't watch Dancing with the Stars or Oprah or any of that bullshit. Because I feel like that's a form of brainwashing. I want to think for myself. I don't want someone else to think for me. And so, guys, did I talk about this on another podcast? The Hindus have, they call it the third eye. It's this gland that we have in the center of our brain, and it makes us aware of things that are going on around us. Not that I'm Hindu or I'm Buddhist or anything, because I'm not, but they have this belief that the third eye can very well see as much as our two ocular eyes. And so a popular conspiracy theory is if you fluorinate yourself with tap water and with Pepsi Cola and Ivory soap, then your third eye, pituitary gland, whatever the hell it's called, becomes calcified, and you can no longer see through that eye. Not physically seeing, but you're not capable of thinking that there's other life out there, that there's other worlds. The only thing that you can concentrate on is this fucking college quarterback and what his stats are. I don't give a shit about that. I don't care about celebrities. I don't care about Hollywood. I mean, there's so much more to it than that. So I almost kind of feel bad for people who are only capable of thinking in those terms. So much more to it than that. I'm done. I'm completely done. I don't even want to talk anymore.
Sorry, no. I'm here to tell you. Dustin, I'm so high-fiving you. I wish I could pour you a bourbon and smoke a cigar with you in real time, because I was muting our mic as you were talking because of the things you were saying, which were resonating with us on our own personal levels on so many. Paul wants to comment on one of them, and then I'll make a comment of my own. But
I think the pineal gland in the brain.
Pineal gland, yes, Paul. Thank you.
Yes, and the third eye. I've heard that idea as well, and I think we are beyond physical beings, beyond there's the what's it called, materialist reductionism, that we are simply everything's that we know all the physics or whatever, and that we are beyond that in terms of what we really are.
And what we really are.
Yeah,
what we really are. Yep.
And we have some power. We have capabilities that
which have been taken away from us through how society has been. And not to get into it, but let's just shelve it. Let's just put this on the shelf for another podcast, because so seriously, Dustin. So I call Paul cousin husband, because my cousin, he's husband to my cousin, and my cousin is Native, and her and I have had conversations throughout my whole life, and and a lot more recently since I moved back to Minnesota. But that whole third eye, this whole metaphysical aspect. And I'm not saying it doesn't resonate with Paul or with Redbeard or anybody else who's watching or listening to this, but there's definitely times where I feel or sense things, and sure shit, then there's an animal, and with my cousin, his wife Roberta, cousin husband, we'll have these kind of spiritual conversations. So it goes into a little bit. It's slightly different, but it's a part of us that is being slowly, as you said, calcified and hardened, and we don't use this anymore. And that's taking away from who we are as humans and what we can really understand and perceive. And
we're asleep.
Dude.
And the people
we are asleep. Most of us are asleep. Some of us are a little bit more awake, but generally speaking, we're all asleep at some fucking level. Damn right.
Well, if you buy into that whole pineal gland deal becoming calcified, and the conspiracy theory that fluoride's intentionally put in our toothpaste and our drinking water to keep us dumb, Well, I mean, I don't drink tap water, but I use regular toothpaste. But nonetheless, if you buy into that, I believe when disclosure happens or contact happens, the people with the pineal gland that's not calcified are the ones who are going to be curious, the ones who will want to go forward and say, "Oh my gosh, man, what a it's discovery of humankind." I mean, there's not once we find out there's life somewhere else, there's no greater news. And the people who are asleep or they're sugar zombies or whatever the case may be. Football's on again. No offense to anyone who watches professional. I like baseball, by the way. So people who are, they know the stats of their favorite football player, but they don't know the stats of their politicians, their elected officials. There's something wrong there. Something's broken. Their priorities are in different places. So the people who have calcified pineal gland, they're the ones who are going to lose their shit when they find out about disclosure. They're the ones that are going to off themselves with suicide, or they're the ones who are going to say, you know what, I'm not going to pay my mortgage. I'm going to go out and party, and I'm going to go out and do this and do that because there's no meaning to life. We find out there's life somewhere else. If anything, guys, that's going to make my religious convictions stronger, I think. I'm done, guys. It really, y'all are pissing me off.
No, come on, we're not pissing you off, but because I'm high-fiving. Like, I love what you just said. Like, the moment that there is like somebody like says, "No shit, there's alien life," I'll be like, "Christianity, motherfuckers!" Like, no, my religious views will be like totally, in my opinion, justified. But
it's like Jeremy said, this is a campfire conversation, guys. Where can you go to have conversations like this? People think you're crazy. I mean, my wife and I have conversations like this all the time, but like-minded people being able to talk about this stuff, it's really refreshing. You're not pissing me off and joking. I get like emotional when trying to make a point, I guess, but no, I think it's wonderful.
What are you, a human being? Do you get emotional?
To be fair,
a quick side note. Jeremy and I actually wanted to do this around a campfire. Our original thought for this was this is always going to be done around campfire. And Jeremy, what did you call it? You call it campfire?
Campfire culture.
All of this was always going to be done around a fucking campfire because of what you just said, Dustin. Now, on that note, so we're at 2 hours and 10 minutes roughly. So, Paul, any final comments?
No. Keep curious.
Yeah, stay curious. Dustin, any final comments from you, sir?
Paul, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's what being a human's about.
Mm-hmm.
Stay curious. Always wonder.
Yeah. Dude, I hate to throw a plug for my business, but my business motto is keep thinking, keep moving, never quit.
Guys, as soon as we quit thinking, that means someone else is thinking for us. And I don't want anyone else thinking for me. Someone else is in control. Someone else is pulling your strings. Yeah, stay curious. Keep thinking. Keep wondering. Yeah. I'm done.
Redbeard, you've got final comments, and then you got housekeeping to do.
So just real quick, I'm the type of person to where I'll go into a Caribou Coffee and have these conversations, because the fact of the matter is somebody might think you're a lunatic, but guess what? I guarantee you at some point there's a good chance that of the people that think you're a lunatic, at least one of them is going to go back to their house and be like, well, maybe he's not as fucking crazy as I thought he was. And then they'll rabbit hole shit. So it's like, I feel like having conversations in places like that. And I've been genuinely surprised. Like the manager at the Caribou Coffee around here that I go to, never thought that he would be as based as he is and like on the level in terms of like liberty and stuff like that, because he doesn't look that way. But you cannot always take people based off how they look or how they dress or where they fucking shop, because look, like this guy, he shoots, he carries a gun, me and him agree on way more shit than we disagree with. And which, to be fair, like, I don't even know if there's anything that we've talked about necessarily that we disagree with. And you never would have known it by him. So honestly, like I'd encourage people go out and have those wacky conversations, because you honestly never know who you're going to talk to that's going to be like, no, yeah, like I hear you, man. Like, and you might find somebody you will end up around a campfire with that you never would have thought. And that's part of, like, that in and of itself is who we're supposed to be as a person. Like the idea that we have become so disposed to not wanting to create conversations in public is why we're partially as fucked up as we are, because we're so afraid of what the public thinks about us that we don't actually engage in social behavior anymore. And I'm not about that. Like I've talked about some pretty crazy shit in public, and I've had at least usually one person be like, hey, what are you talking about over here? I'm like, oh, rabbit holing this today. All right, cool, fair enough. And it might spawn a conversation, might not. You might get a weird look, you might not. So
Yeah, I think I've actually had these conversations with you in a coffee shop where I've noticed people looking over at us, and I'm glad you just said it that way. So again, whether it's UFOs, little green men, or any of the most geopolitical or domestic related issues, don't be afraid to have those conversations.
Like-minded people will find you. You will attract like-minded people.
Curious people, open-minded people.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing. It's like if you never have the conversation out in public, then how are people supposed to change their opinion or look at something a different way? We've become so used to looking at a screen and talking to people through a screen that we have foregone basic in-person social things. Like so we're gonna have a podcast on that about social constructs and behavior, because that's a whole loaded topic. But on that note, Mark,
this podcast has already opened up like 3 different podcasts. But my last final comments before we turn it over to you for questions and housekeeping is Dustin appears to be set up to go on a ruck march right now. I have no idea what Dustin just did, but he went from his shop, and it seems like, Dustin, are you going to battle or something? What are you doing right now, sir?
No, so it's probably on my shoulder. That.
Yeah. What is that?
It's a Maxpedition bag that I keep a pistol. After COVID, so I had COVID 2 years ago. In fact, 2 years ago, right now, I was in the hospital, and I spent 60 days in the hospital, 24 days on the ventilator with COVID. And when I got out of the hospital, I was in a wheelchair, couldn't walk, but graduated to a walker. So I'm a wheelchair and walker. I carry my day bag with me, in which I would carry change of socks, underwear, my wallet, my pistol, medications, and a day bag. So I got used to carrying a day bag, but as I started getting healthier, I didn't need a change of underwear. I didn't need a change of socks. And so my bag got smaller and smaller. So actually your GCC is a good size for that, but I do have my canteen in that. But so I carry a small Maxpedition that I keep my wallet, a pistol, and just a couple things in that I might need during the day. So it's a shoulder sling bag.
So basically my takeaway from that as we're wrapping this up is you're just showing us through your phone a little bit more of how badass it is where you live in your shop and what it looks like, because you're outside of your shop right now. And
I'm outside. I'm outside of my home. So my shop is about 100 feet from my house. So
you're just rubbing it in our faces how cool it is where you live.
So my shop is.
Come on, boys and girls, look how badass that is. Seriously.
My shop is down there somewhere, I think. And then this is my property, and I've got some real big live oak trees, and anyway.
Fucking love it.
Guys, I'm out. I love y'all. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, then, if you don't mind sticking around for a couple more seconds, or if you got to tap out, tap out. But otherwise, Jeremy is about to take us out with the final question for the giveaway and the outro.
Yeah. So, all right. So, real
Dustin, are you
quick.
going to stick around for a couple seconds?
Say again.
Dustin, can you stick around for a couple seconds?
Oh, yeah. My battery may die, but yeah, I'm here.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there you go, Jeremy. Take us out, sir.
Yep. Yeah. So basically, question is it's referencing something we had talked about a couple weeks ago, but it's still a pretty good question because we just got done talking about exploration and adventure and growing your your learning and stuff like that. So here we go. So my question for you, and I'll phrase the question once or twice, and then we can also write it in the comments or the video description as well. But my question for you is, in the 1950s, the U.S. Army dispersed a powder/compound on the American population in several major U.S. cities. What was the powder/compound and the methods of dispersing it?
All right, I just got to say this. Yeah, I love this already because I forgot that we talked.
You know what it's about.
I know this. I love this already. I forgot we talked about this. Say it again, sir.
Yeah. So the question starts as this, and then it'll get to the question in the second half. But in the 1950s, the U.S. Army dispersed a powder/compound on the American population in several major U.S. cities. What was the powder/compound and the methods of dispersing it? So that is the question for the giveaway.
Okay, and a reminder for the giveaway. By the way, dude, I forgot about this question. I actually had the answer to this question written down on a sticky note in my wallet for like 10 years. Like when I first found this out, I wrote it down on a sticky note and it was in my wallet for like 10 years because this is like, it's fucking crazy. And if you don't know what Jeremy's talking about, even if you just try to do the research and try to find the answer, you're going to be
you will rabbit hole a lot of fucked up shit.
Yeah, seriously. So here's the giveaway though. So, all right, you don't get the Ruger 1022, but this isn't even on my website yet. Right? This is the final working prototype, and I love this thing so much. So we're gonna give away
awesome.
a pouch it's designed around a Ruger 1022, but it can go with a bunch of other things. So that's the giveaway. Plus this awesome EDC. Yeah, Vanna White here, Vanna White. One more time. There you go, a little Vanna White. EDC tray from County Com. These things are just awesome. So that's the giveaway from Jeremy's incredibly. And here's what's awesome. What I love about that question. When Jeremy and I, what was that, Jeremy? 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, we first started talking.
Yeah, it was close to a month now. Yeah.
Yeah. And Jeremy threw this out, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of funny. I know of something like this." And then it was through I was like, "No, we're talking about the same thing." I'm so impressed that he knew about this. I fucking love that question.
Yeah, and the thing of it is like when all of you guys go to actually figure this out and see what it actually like is concerning, all I'm gonna say is it's going to, if you're not convinced at this point that the U.S. government's not capable of doing some shit, I'm here to tell you.
No. Yeah. Just put your head back in the sand. Just put your head back in the sand, motherfucker.
Look at this. Yeah, at this point, then just watch your TikTok and don't even think about anything else. So I'm gonna leave it at that. So
no, that's a great way to end it. So how about this? Before you do your outro, from my perspective, Paul here in the studio, cousin husband, Dustin down below, over in Texas, showing how badass his shop is. That's awesome. I just got to say thank you very much for both of you for being here tonight, taking the time out of your lives.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Just totally appreciate it.
And
on that
Paul,
note,
nice meeting you. Jeremy, good to see you again.
It's great to see you, Dustin.
Good to meet you all. It's been a blast.
It's good to see you, Paul.
Any comments from Paul and Dustin before Jeremy takes us out? Anything?
I'm done.
Just like I said, it's been a blast. Interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Any conversation or any comments to anybody who's watching this?
Oh, hello.
All right. So that was kind of.
Hope you enjoyed it.
There you go.
What made you think?
Dustin, final comments from you, sir.
No, thanks for having me. It was great. I really enjoyed it.
Heck yeah.
I so want to be able to drink frickin' bourbon or something with you someday, sir. You are a good
Yeah,
man.
we
Joe.
will. That'll be awesome. I'm gonna head
I
up to the North Country one day.
Hey, if nothing else, I want to come down and see your shop. I want to see all the tools and shit you have and how you're making stuff. I'm so fascinated by that. I love it. I mean, as a maker myself, every time I get a little glimpse of your shop when you're walking around, it's almost like you're intentionally teasing us. You're like, oh yeah, I love it. I love it.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Redbeard.
All right.
On
You
that
guys
note,
know what time it is. And I think it's becoming slowly one of Mark's favorite times. I could be wrong.
it is. I actually love it. I really do love it.
But hey, look, I just want to thank each and every person that came here, tonight, giving us your time to put out your thoughts and your opinions and everything that you have to offer, as always, to all of our guests, not just tonight, but to all of our guests. And I know some of our guests do stop in and watch the videos and stuff like that. You guys are overwhelmingly appreciated. We really enjoy having everybody come on here, and the time you take out of your days and the contributions you make. We are very, very happy to have you here. That being said, it's the same with all of our regular viewers to newer viewers and stuff like that. We really appreciate it. So thank you for staying in there with us. On that note, the flame of liberty shall not and will not be extinguished so long as good people are willing to support and defend it. And as Mark always says, you are the resistance, which means you have a responsibility and a duty to support our liberty and defend our rights, and most importantly, to take care of hearth and home as well as our communities. So look, that's all I got. Mark, on that note, let's take her out, buddy.
See y'all next week.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. Be good, everybody. Woo!
Thanks.